GE 3. 9-11. To be true to himself, as well as for the good of the rest of his universal family, Jehovah God could not countenance such a sinful course, on the part of either his human creatures or the spirit's unturned rebel. Maintaining his holiness, he justly imposed the sentence of death on them all. The human pair were then expelled from God's garden in Eden, hence cut off from access to that other tree designated by God as the tree of life. GE 3. 14-24. Results to mankind as a whole. Romans 5. 12 states that through one man sin entered into the world and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men, because they had all sinned. Compare 1 John 1. 8-10. Some have explained this as meaning that all of Adam's future offspring shared in Adam's initial act of sin because, as their family head, he represented them and thereby made them, in effect, participants with him in his sin. The apostle, however, speaks of death as spreading to all men, which implies a progressive rather than a simultaneous effect on Adam's descendants. Additionally, the apostle goes on to speak of death as ruling as king from Adam down to Moses, even over those who had not sinned after the likeness of the transgression by Adam. Row 5. 14. Adam's sin is rightly called a transgression, since it was an overstepping of a stated law, an express command of God to him. Also, when Adam sinned, it was of his own free choice, as a perfect human who was free from disabilities. Clearly, his offspring have never enjoyed that state of perfection. So, these factors seem out of harmony with the view that when Adam sinned, all of his as yet unborn descendants sinned with him. For all of Adam's descendants to be held accountable as participants in Adam's personal sin would require some expression of will on their part as to having him as their family head. Yet none of them in reality willed to be born of him, their birth into the Adamic line resulting from the fleshly will of their parents. Job 1. 13. The evidence, then, points to a passing on of sin from Adam to succeeding generations as a result of the recognized law of heredity. This is evidently what the psalmist refers to in saying, "With error I was brought forth with birth pains, and in sin my mother conceived me." PS 51. 5. Sin, along with its consequences, entered and spread to all the human race not merely because Adam was the family head of the race but because he, not Eve, was its progenitor, or human life source. From him, O textui acute miritra longo, sin, I-965 has ruled as king over mankind, enslaving them, this slavery being one into which they were sold by Adam. Row 5. 17, 21. 6. 17. 7. 14. Job 8. 34. These statements show that sin is viewed not only as the actual commission or omission of certain acts, but also as a law or governing principle or force operating in them, namely, the inborn inclination toward wrongdoing that they inherit from Adam. Their Adamic inheritance has therefore produced weakness of the flesh, imperfection. Row 6. 19. Sin's law continually works in their fleshly members, in effect trying to control their course, to make them its subjects, out of harmony with God. Row 7. 15, 17, 18, 20-23. F2. 1-3. King Sin may give its orders in different ways to different persons and at different times. Thus, God, noting the anger of Adam's first son Cain against his brother Abel, warned Cain that he should turn to doing good, for, he said, "There is sin crouching at the entrance, and for you is its craving. And will you, for your part, get the mastery over it?" Cain, however, let the sin of envy and hatred master him, leading him to murder. GE 4. 3-8. Compare 1 to 15. 23. Sickness, pain, and aging. Since death in humans is generally associated with disease or the aging process, it follows that these are concomitants of sin. Under the Mosaic law covenant with Israel, the laws governing sacrifices for sin included atonement for those who had suffered from the plague of leprosy. But 14. 2:19 Those touching a human corpse or even entering the tent where a person had died became unclean and required ceremonial purification. New 19. 11-19. Compare New 31. 19, 20. Jesus, 2, associated illness with sin Mount 9. 2-7. Joe 5. 5-15, although he showed that specific afflictions are not necessarily the result of any specific sinful acts. Joe 9. 2, 3 other texts show the beneficial effects of righteousness, a course opposite from sinning on one's health. PR 3. 7, 8. 4. 20-22. 14. 30 during Christ's reign, the elimination of death, which rules with sin. Row 5. 21, will be accompanied by the end of pain. 1 Co 15. 25, 26. Re 21. 4. Sin and law. The Apostle John writes that everyone who practices sin is also practicing lawlessness, and so sin is lawlessness. 1 Joe 3. 4. Also that all unrighteousness is sin. 1 Joe 5. 17 The Apostle Paul, on the other hand, speaks of those who sinned without law. He further states that until the law given through Moses